He's suggesting you're beholden to China. He talked about your regular visits to China. You went there at the time when Xi was trying to show the world that he's open for business. You went back in the fall. Then Brookfield secured a $276 million loan for some property there, I guess that was underwater. Was that a sweetheart loan? Are you beholden to China?
Absolutely not. China happens to be our second largest trading partner.
In response to Mark Carney's excuses for not wanting to attend a French debate in Quebec, Pierre doubled down on the challenge and offered to resolve Carney's issues. Between a huge mistake in referring to the Polytechnique massacre and what happened at his press conference in Windsor today, it's becoming obvious why Mark Carney is so afraid to debate in French. And on top of all of that, reporters actually did their jobs today and confronted Carney on Pierre's accusation about him being trapped by his $250 million loan from China.
Let's take a look.
On the debate, well, his excuses are changing from day to day. Mark Carney says he doesn't want to debate because there's a fee. Well, I'll pay the fee. He says that he doesn't want to debate because Elizabeth May has not been invited. Well, I'll invite her. So let's invite Elizabeth May. I'll pay the fee, so Mark Carney can't afford to pay $75,000. Conservatives are generous, we'll pay it for him. But if he's still too weak and fragile to debate at TVA, then he's too weak and fragile to stand up to Donald Trump and for our country.
So it was funny because we were actually told this by one of the MPs that we were sitting next to yesterday in the rally. So we went back and took another look at this, and sure enough, this was literally the last 40 seconds of one of Pierre's press conferences yesterday. And, you know, can the Liberals pay for this? Yes, of course they can pay for this. Do they care that Elizabeth May wasn't invited? Of course they don't care. I
mean, they wouldn't care that Maxime Bernier wasn't invited.
Well, and that's the point.
Or like Canada has something like 12 registered political parties. It's not only the top four. So, I mean, they could say anything about, you know, the Maverick Party not being invited, or the Rhino Party, or the Communist Party. Like, it's just pushing the goalpost and looking for excuses is what this is.
What he's trying to do is he's trying to not step in the bear trap, not necessarily with Pierre Poilievre, but he would be going on the home turf of Yves-François Blanchet, who will tear him apart when it comes to a French debate. Because this is literally Yves' first language. And it is in front of Quebecers, and Carney has to do well in Quebec in order to do well in the election. So very well played by Pierre. Carney's not going to, he's not going to pick it up, and Pierre's going to keep poking him about it. But it's just, you have to take advantage of every weakness that your opponent gives you, especially during an election. Now, let's go to Mark Carney's press conference in Windsor, Ontario today, where it's a bit odd to watch. Reporters were actually doing their job. Let's take a look.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Just on your personal assets, do you have any, in Stripe and Brookfield, do you have any equity, stock options, or anticipate any future payments from either two of those companies?
So the first thing to say with respect to my personal assets is I have complied with all of the rules. In fact, I've over-complied with all of the rules in advance. So months and months and months in advance, and put in place both divestitures. So I actually don't own directly any stocks in those companies, but since I had worked at those companies, I put in place ethical screens. So my approach to public life, and I've been in public life for more than 2 decades, is to meet all the standards and surpass the standards with the highest integrity. And my record, you can look at it, my track record is that as Governor of the Bank of Canada and other roles internationally. So I comply with the rules. Pierre Poilievre has had 927 days to get his security clearance.
Wow. just wow. It's the same talking points because it's the same people behind the scenes giving him these talking points.
Right. So for everybody saying, well, Mark Carney's different. Well, why are they employing the same strategy?
Because that's all the Liberals have.
This is the same strategy that they've been using since 2023. Like, insert Liberal face here talking about the same strategy.
And we get emails, we get comments, we get questions about how do I talk to people? How do I explain the security clearance thing? I think the first question that you should ask is whether or not the individual you're speaking to believes that the prime minister of the country should be able to tell the citizens who, in terms of parliamentarians, has had or is suspected to have had interference with foreign nations. So if they answer, well, yes, of course they should be able to. Well, if Pierre Poilievre gets that clearance now, then he will not be able to do that as prime minister. He won't be able to do his job as prime minister because he'll effectively be muzzled. And even if he does learn these names again when he becomes prime minister, he will not be able to tell people what they are because under the NSICOP clearance, it's for life. It's a for life ban. You cannot talk about it.
Well, and here's the other thing. The counter to that is, okay, so are you saying before this NSICOP security clearance, are you saying that the Prime Minister never told party leaders ever in the history of Canada when there was a problem potentially from foreign interference that related to their party? Is that your contention? If so, then you should talk to Tom Mulcair, who admits on air and has admitted recently on air that Stephen Harper, on a couple of occasions, called him up. He cites one example where Tom was at his wedding while he was the leader of the NDP and the official opposition. He called him up at his wedding and said, hey, I have some information for you. Tom did not have NSICOP security clearance because it didn't exist. But the Prime Minister has the ability to do that. The Prime Minister also has the ability to ask CSIS to give people a threat reduction measure briefing, as Tanya referred to on a previous video, that allows CSIS to divulge specific information for that leader to know. And then that leader can take certain actions. So this is actually what this means. So they're saying, okay, so we're not going to give you threat reduction measures. We're not going to give you anything like other prime ministers have done, like conservative prime ministers have done. We're going to use this as a political club to say, well, you're not getting this life ban briefing, and we're just going to club you over the head with that. So be damned with foreign interference. Now, Mark Carney has the same access to all of the information now that Justin Trudeau did about these over 50 parliamentarians.
Now, the real question is, why did Justin Trudeau not tell Canadians this information? And why is Mark Carney not telling Canadians this information, especially now that we're going to an election?
That's a real question.
Well, we don't know if some of these people are running for office again. That's the real problem.
That's the real question.
Hi, Steve Chase from the Globe and Mail. I got one question and one follow-up. The first question's about these issues that Mr. Poilievre raised yesterday. He's suggesting you're beholden to China. He talked about your regular visits to China. You went there at the time when Xi was trying to show the world that he's open for business. You went back in the fall. Then Brookfield secured a $276 million loan for some property there. I guess that was underwater. Was that a sweetheart loan? Are you beholden to China?
Absolutely not. First thing. Second thing I'll say, look, Mr. Poilievre doesn't understand the world. Mr. Poilievre is a lifelong politician. It's all he's ever done. These slogans, sound bites, slander, doesn't understand how the world works. China happens to be our second largest trading partner. It's our second largest trading partner. We have trade disputes with China right now. Caused by them in the agriculture sector. It's one of the areas which we need to engage on. It's one of the areas, when you think about, again, the auto sector and the future of the auto sector, we've got to understand where China is, where China is going, whether or not there's any room for partnership in that. Look, I'm beholden to absolutely no one except to the Canadian people. I am here for the Canadian people.
So I am not beholden to China, but here's some positive things about China. And he tries to say, well, you know, we have some trade disputes with them. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute, folks. Because one of the things that Donald Trump asked us to do is put some trade tariffs on China. We subsequently did that. What China's response was is to put a massive 100% tariff. So why is the Liberal Party not jumping up and down and telling everybody that China is an existential threat to Canada?
Well,
100% tariffs, people, not 25%, 100%.
Well, you know the answer to that, and the answer to that is that Donald Trump isn't the president of China.
Right. and they don't want to appear, quote unquote, racist. So this is the issue, right? This is the issue. And I love that he's just like, no, and I'm not going to address any of that at all. What I'm going to say is Pierre Poilievre doesn't understand the world. He doesn't understand that you have to go to China. You have to make these deals. You have to, you know, kiss the feet of the people that are giving you $250 million from the Bank of China. Like, this is the government-controlled bank. They loaned Carney's company $250 million. You're not beholden to them? Are you kidding me? What about all the real estate deals that you've done with China in China? What about all that? Like, there's literally a picture of Mark Carney with a whole bunch of big, you know, Western executives with the president of China, Xi Jinping. What, you just went there because what?
The Chinese ambassador has given, I think, 3 or 4 interviews in the last few weeks talking about his interest in reopening free trade talks. My question for you is, as we try to diversify away from the United States and reduce our reliance on our trade with the United States, is it your belief that we should be increasing our trade with China?
Look,
and reopening free trade talks.
Here's my view on this broader set of issues. We need to diversify our trade as a country. We are over-reliant on, as wonderful as the trade going across that bridge, we are over-reliant on the United States. I think it's a lesson we've all learned. We need to diversify. We want to diversify with like-minded partners. That's why I went to Europe in my first days as Prime Minister. Spoke first with European President von der Leyen, obviously met with the French President, and then separately, because it's not part of Europe anymore, as you know, the United Kingdom, in terms of building trade with them. There are partners in Asia that we can build deeper ties. There is certain activity that, but the partners in Asia that share our values don't include China. There's certain activity that we could have with China. We obviously do have a large amount of trade with them, but we have to be very careful, very deliberate, and they need to meet Canadian standards.
He didn't say no. And this is the issue. Like, why don't you just say no? No.
Because he gave the political answer, right? Maybe he is getting good at this political stuff.
Well, it's still obvious. Like, well, you know, I went to Europe, and I didn't secure any trade deals at all.
And I spent $500,000 to get there.
Yeah, $500,000 of Canadian taxpayer money to take a little trip.
And I don't have a mandate to do so.
Mm-hmm. So then I came back, and then I called an election. Yeah, there's some partners in Asia. Who do you want to trade with in Asia, Carney? Like, really, on the volume that we're talking about. Who are you going to trade with in Asia? If not China. Russia? Maybe Russia. Oh, wait.
They're at war, are they not?
Oh, wait.
And the Liberals are pro-Ukraine.
So, who knows what the Liberals are pro at this point.
The Liberals are pro whatever is going to get them back into office for another 4 years. And that's why we as Canadians need to do our due diligence and report on the truth and follow up with the truth. We need to consume media that contains the truth, and we need to make sure that they don't get back into office.
This is a guy who they have done massive amounts of business with China. They've actually decreased the amount of assets in Canada since he took over as Brookfield back in 2020 to 2024. They've decreased the amount of assets in Canada by 5% and increased the amount of assets in China by 6%. Sounds like you don't think Canada is too profitable to invest in, but you sure as heck think China is profitable to invest in. So this is what we all need to be worried about when it comes to this stuff. Now, there was one more question that Mark Carney was asked in French. It didn't go well.
Pardon, la dernière partie de...
Juste, si vous pouvez traduire votre réponse sur la Chine, est-ce que vous êtes compromis?
Compromis, pas du tout. Pas du tout. Je travaille pour les Canadiens et les Canadiens. C'est facile. M. Poilievre, il devient de plus en plus fâché et désespéré. Il invente toutes les choses. Il est un homme de... He's a conspiracy theorist. Spends too much time with his MAGA friends, and he comes up with whatever he can think of. I'm beholden to the Canadian people. I'm proud to be working with my colleagues at a crucial time for our country. And I'll say one last thing. We have a positive agenda for this country. We are bringing Canadians together to build. Yes, the auto sector is under threat, but what today is about is building the future of the auto sector together. That's the positive agenda, not coming up with slander of the day. Thank you very much.
Two quick questions from local.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Rob Hindi.
So he was essentially asked kind of the same thing that Steve Chase asked. The French reporter said, "Can you say that in French?" And he was essentially like, "Nope, I don't have any beholden to China." And then he tried to say the same thing about Poilievre in French,
And just didn't have the words.
well, and started fumbling the words. He said he was angry, but he couldn't continue the sentence, so he just said, "Screw it."
You flip back to English.
Yeah. So this is a guy who cannot think and respond in French appropriately.
Well, and when you have roughly, now this is just a rough number, it may not be the exact stat, but roughly 1 in 5 Canadians who speak French as their mother tongue, meaning that's their first language, and you have a prime minister who cannot, he can't communicate with them effectively, that's not a good look.
No.
Not at all.
No, it's not. And it was on display yesterday as well, because he was doing this kind of meet and greet and introduction of a candidate who was a survivor of the Polytechnic shooting way back when. And Mark Carney decided to talk about it, but completely gaffed A, the woman's name, and B, where it was held. Liberal leader Mark Carney made a couple of mistakes while on the campaign trail Tuesday. While in Nova Scotia, Carney spoke about the diverse backgrounds of Liberal candidates, citing Montrealer Natalie Provost, a survivor of the Polytechnic massacre and a gun control advocate. However, he mispronounced her last name as Provost and mistakenly referred to Concordia instead of Polytechnique as the site of the 1989 tragedy. Carney later apologized. So,
I think if you are a Canadian, you know about the Polytechnic massacre, and I think it's extremely egregious that I would say somebody who wants to be prime minister, but somebody who is currently prime minister would get that wrong. I think it's very offensive, to be quite honest.
well, and why would you get that wrong? A, you haven't really paid attention to Canada for a while, and B, you don't give a damn. And this is the concern with Mark Carney, is that the only person he cares about is Mark Carney. The only money that he cares about is Mark Carney's money. And the only future that he cares about is the future of Mark Carney, not Canadians.